Do you know what happens when you don't get enough sleep? Do you suffer from low energy, brain fog, irritability, lack of focus? It all sucks, right? Even though most of us knows what it feels like when we don't get enough sleep, many of us underestimate how critical it is for our overall health and well-being. I've had a lot of sleep issues over the last couple of years, mainly due to perimenopause. I feel like I've tried pretty much everything, and I was still getting up 4 or 5 times a night. It sucked. And then I met integrative cannabis physician, Dr. June Chin. Honestly, at the time, I thought cannabis really was just for stoners. I didn't realize that this plant has amazing medicinal properties that can help with sleep and so many other health issues. I'm Risa Morimoto, your host. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach, and you're watching Modern Aging, where we chat about innovative and holistic ways to optimize our health and well-being as we age. If you're new to the channel, I'd love for you to subscribe. All you gotta do is click on that little red button below with that little bell next to it to be sure to be notified whenever a new episode is posted. Be sure to check out our website at thisismodernaging.com for all of our latest info and programs. So today I chat with Dr. June and author of Women in Weed, Alana Frankel, about how we can get a better night's sleep. If you're in the health and wellness field or have a deep interest in holistic health and cannabis, you have to check out our new program, Medical Cannabis and CBD for Women's Health. Dr. June does a deep dive teaching on not only the science behind cannabis, but how it can be applied to a myriad of health conditions that affect women. You're also going to learn how to shop properly for cannabis and CBD products, which is critical, especially when there's very little regulation right now, as well as how to and when to take it for maximum relief. Modern Aging viewers get $100 off. Just use the code MACBD100. For more information, go to cbdwomenshealth.co. If you have any questions about the program, you can put them in the comments section below. But for now, check out my chat with Dr. June and Alana. So today we're going to talk about sleep and why we can't sleep. And how we can sleep better. I know that as soon as I hit 50, I used to be the best sleeper, the best. Perimenopause, it was done. And now I'm like up 4 or 5 times a night.
I'm the same way. I could just be able to sleep standing up.
Yeah. I know. I used to be like that too.
Like a horse. I just close my eyes and I can just...
I don't know. I can still do that. I don't have trouble falling asleep. I have trouble staying asleep. Like I could fall asleep like right now. Like no problem.
Well,
I could curl up and just call it a day. And as you know, June doesn't call me after a certain hour because she knows I'm asleep, and it's a pretty early hour. But I have trouble staying asleep throughout the night. Mm-hmm. So I think there's different kinds of sleep disruptions and sleep patterns that people have, especially women. And I know for me, like, I have no problem falling. It's staying. So that's where I work.
Yeah. I'm up early. That's why I text you. We're calling each other at 5 in the morning.
I know.
It's
What are you doing?
sad but true. Oh, it's not even that. It's work stuff. It's like, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's more like, more cannabis-related stuff. But yeah, so like, what are we doing? I mean, I just feel like everybody's talking about sleep disruption, right? That they can't sleep. And there are a number of reasons why we're not sleeping, right? So we're all under enormous amounts of stress. Our bodies are changing. Hormones, we're eating, we're not exercising enough, or, you know.
The environment.
Yeah.
Where you're living, how you're living.
Yeah.
Health equity is a big issue.
Right. Like sleep doesn't just start at the bedroom, like, at night right before it's time to, put your head on the pillow. It really, you have to set the tone throughout the entire day.
So what do you mean by that?
So when you wake up, exercising is important, obviously moving your body, but also keeping your nervous system in check during the day will help you prepare for sleep at night. And we forget about that. So we're always in this hyperactive, sympathetic drive, where we're running from the bear at all times. So our brain doesn't stop when it's 8:30, 9 p.m. when it's time to wind down. And so a lot of times we try and reach for alcohol, or we eat and snack to try and, distract our bodies and quiet our minds. But we can actually use CBD and cannabis to help calm our nervous system more naturally.
I love the idea of cannabis. Instead of you spending your day always taking 2 steps forward, cannabis helps you take a step back. It allows you to take a moment, quiet the mind, quiet the body, and really start to notice what you need to do to get you to the point where you're going to get a good night's sleep. I also think to calm the nervous system, the best thing that I've found in combination with cannabis is breath work, because that incredible amount of deep breathing consistently and constantly is an instant calming of the mind and the nervous system. And layer upon that or stack upon that some cannabis, CBD, THC, whatever it is, works like a charm.
Or so even with something like yoga, even.
Yeah.
So you're doing this right before bed, or you're doing this like during the day?
Breath work all day long, from the moment I wake up until the moment I go to sleep. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I am doing my breath work. It really helps me a lot. There are certain parts of the day, like closer to bedtime, where I will stack or include CBD or cannabis, THC into my protocol, but otherwise breathing throughout the entire day.
So when you're talking about breath work, are you talking about like Wim Hof type of breath work, or are you talking about just deep meditative kind of slower breathing?
It's different for everybody. You might want the cold breath work. You might want the deep breath work. You might want yogic work. You might want a hot breath work. It's so personal, and it's so unique to whoever you are and what works for you. There are certain things that work differently at certain times and certain seasons. So it just depends, but mostly I'm a fan of deep, slow, meditative breaths, counting, inhaling for a certain amount count, and then exhaling twice that amount.
And cannabis and CBD can help you to tap into that and quiet the mind.
Unbelievably so. And also it definitely enhances and amplifies the experience so that I'm very present and very aware.
As is she. Or him.
Very present and very aware of my breath with cannabis, and I think being present is really important.
And that's key. It's not just about the cannabis and CBD. You know, that's the key. It's not just about cannabis and CBD. It's about how you incorporate other things in your life, whether it's breath work, exercise, whether it's diet, whether it's how you carry your own stress, giving you the tools to deal with the different stressors that you encounter day to day.
Right. So, I mean, what is CBD, or whether it's CBD or cannabis, actually, doing physiologically in your body that's causing you to relax enough to be able to sleep?
Yeah. So
Like, it's not Xanax.
no, it's not. I can call it the natural Xanax. I call it the natural Xanax because cannabinoids work on your GABA receptors, your serotonin receptors, your dopamine receptors. It really helps calm the nervous system down in a systemic level. So when you look at addicting benzos like Xanax or Klonopin, you're only supposed to take that for 1 to 2 weeks tops. It's situational. When you start going into 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, your body can actually develop an addiction to benzos. You know, even Valium, for example. But when you're incorporating something like cannabis and CBD, you can use it on some days and maybe not use it for others. There's no withdrawal periods. There's no ramping up periods like you do with pharmaceutical medications. So that's what I love about incorporating plant-based medicine, because it works systemically on the whole body and you can use it when you need it.
So would you say it works right away? Or is it the type of thing, like a lot of plant medicines, where you kind of have to use it, you know, for a week or 2 weeks to start really feeling the effects? And will the effects be different if you take it every day?
I think it depends on the person.
I think it depends on the person and your intake method. You know, I think it depends on if you're inhaling, if you're ingesting, if it's a topical. It also depends on ages and stages, time of day. As we've discussed before, CBD for some people can act as a stimulant. And so you really need to make sure that what you're using, how much you're using, dosage is really important, why you're using it, is all in, your ducks are in a row before you start to think about, you know, okay, is this helping or is this not helping,
And
or
hormones,
how?
hormones too. Depends on ages and stages. That's what she means by hormones. Could be, you know, female hormones, they're at certain times of the cycle, or if you have no cycle, you might react differently to cannabinoids.
And I think you know, over the years, my experience has changed a lot with different intake methods at different, like, you know, from inhalation to topicals. You know, I always thought inhalation was it, but there are nights where if I just rub a topical on my feet, put on socks so it warms it up and goes to sleep, I sleep incredibly well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I don't need any inhalation, I don't need an edible. So it just depends.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about like using straight up CBD or, or hemp products versus using marijuana, using marijuana. And then there's other cannabinoids that people can use, right? And how would you recommend people dose, and at what point do you realize this is not helping me? Like, because I know you can't OD on it, but there must be a certain threshold where you're like, I should try something different.
Got it. Well, I think the number one thing, if you've never tried any cannabis before, try CBD. And I still, even with the CBD, I would use it later in the day because it's a new supplement. It's a new natural supplement. So take it during the day where you don't have a 9 a.m. meeting where you're not going to speak in front of your colleagues or drive a car because you just don't know.
Right.
And then always look for tested products, third-party tested products, because if you don't get reputable products and you don't know where it's coming from, there could be a whole bunch of other things in it. THC, there could be no CBD at all, or they could have added other chemicals, maybe even sleep aids that you might not react well to. So you really have to look at the ingredients.
Yeah, you really need to read the label and do some research. And I've been speaking about educating yourself before you even walk into a dispensary or store. So it's really important to make sure that you go in with as much information, not only about yourself, but also about products and what you want to try, and have a conversation with somebody who you trust, whether that's a bud tender or a shopkeeper or a friend or a doctor, whatever it is. Make sure that you're having the right conversations before you just go out and try something. I also think, like you mentioned before, there are some new minor cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids being introduced, and you'll hear a lot recently about CBN, and especially when it comes to sleep disruptions. And that's something new that people are starting to get excited about because it is acting as CBD, but even more so in terms of calming, relaxing, quieting. So you'll start to see, I think, a lot of sleep aids, including CBN.
Oh, wow. So that's probably a game changer in the industry, no? I mean, does it give you any kind of different effect than a CBD or a THC?
I think it's much more targeted for sleep, right? So CBD, again, can stimulate certain people, but if you're using CBN in particular, then it's going to definitely help you sleep. And you would use small doses, use a few milligrams. They do, with some reputable brands, make them like 1 or 2 milligrams at a time, sort of like melatonin, comes in 1, 2 milligrams, then 10 milligrams, so you can adjust that way as well.
So if people are already taking prescription meds, or people are already self-medicating with alcohol or something to try to help them sleep, how do they integrate cannabis with what they're currently doing to wean off of one? Or, can you take it together, or should you absolutely go cold turkey before trying?
I think you need to speak with your doctor first. So there's that disclaimer. But a lot of my patients will take a sleep aid with cannabinoids, and they do it safely, most of them. I would just say split them about 2 to 3 hours apart. If you're trying to wean off sleep aids like a Lunesta, an Ambien, or Restoril, Xanax, Klonopin, take the cannabinoids first, and then you might realize 3 hours later you don't need your prescription, or you might need to just break it in half and take half of the prescription. And that's kind of starts off the weaning process. But you can talk to your doctor, and your doctor can give you a weaning schedule from your pharmaceutical as you fold in the cannabinoids. So definitely have a healthcare provider help you with that. With alcohol,
I mean, I would get rid of alcohol. Just get rid of it altogether. I think that alcohol before bed, even without whatever, is challenging, and especially if you're trying to, get sleep.
Yeah.
With the sugar and with the distortion and disorientation.
Yeah,
no.
you can't stay asleep.
But people think that they can.
People think they can, but you can't. You'll wake up in the middle of the night.
It's the idea, again, of falling asleep and then staying asleep. So with alcohol, a lot of people feel like, oh, I can fall asleep really easily. But a couple hours later, most likely they're going to be up.
Right. Not to mention the weight gain and the sugar.
No, it's real.
Yeah.
No, it's like, and I'm sure that And we know over the last couple of years, I think, alcohol sales have gone up a lot and, a lot of sleep disruption. And, it's just trying to figure out what will work for me, right?
And it's not to say that alcohol is a bad thing. I want to be clear. Like, everybody wants their glass of wine at dinner or whatever it is. We're talking about an excessive amount with the intention of getting you to sleep. Again, it goes back to intention.
Yeah,
so if you're having a glass of wine here and there, like, okay, have fun, like it's okay, if you're having a cocktail, okay. But if you're walking into a situation and saying, okay, I'm going to do this with alcohol so I will sleep, then I think we can step back and be like,
That's a good clarification.
not the right choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when you see gummies now on sale, you see tinctures, you see, so give me a sense in terms of like, we've talked about stacking on previous videos, right? Do you recommend stacking? And how much do you take of each one? Because even with tinctures, you have different potency, right? Depending. So where is the starting point?
Again, starting low and slow for your own body and your own metabolism would be the best thing. And
So
just
what's
keep
low?
a journal. So let's say you were using CBD, I would say the average adult can take 10 to 15 milligrams to start. And let's say you're adding a THC, you would do 1 milligram increments every 3 to 5 days, and you can increase it that way. If you use the inhalation method, you would take 1 to 2 puffs, wait 10 minutes, wait a half an hour, see if it makes you sleepy. You might follow up with an edible or a tincture so that the inhalation method will get you to fall asleep quickly, but then that edible or the tincture will kick in so you're not waking up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and 4 a.m.
Because the edible will keep you asleep for that 6 to 8 hour period. So that's a really good point. So the inhalation gets you to sleep, and then the edible keeps you asleep.
Right. And then there are some formulations that add melatonin. So you'll find CBD and melatonin, or CBN and melatonin, or valerian root. So if you're not sensitive to those, you might use a combination of cannabinoids and a natural sleep supplement.
I will say, though, that with gummies, you really have to look at the ingredients because a lot of gummies have sugar. And a lot of gummies, yeah. So, I think edibles is different than gummies. Let's sort of make that, distinction there. And a tincture, while you're eating it's edible, it's ingesting more than being an edible. So I think that, again, ingredients are an important thing to understand because you're having all that sugar before bed. Just like alcohol, you're going to wake up.
Yep.
So in terms of taking THC, there are many different strains, right? And so there are some strains, or what they're calling strains, that are more specific for sleep or more for relaxation. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. So there's uplifting, there's strains that are more uplifting, there's strains that are more about relaxation, and then there's hybrids, a little bit of both. And again, it just depends on your preference, who you are, what you react to, and having a conversation with the person that's selling you your bud tender in your dispensary. Talking to that person saying, okay, let's really have a conversation because this is what I want it for.
Yes.
I want this, walking in and saying, this is my intention, I want it for sleep. Sell me something that is going to help me sleep.
And the great thing about strains now is we know what's called the cannabinoid profile. So we know how much THC percentages is in there, or CBD or CBN. So when you get to know your dispensary staff and you get to know your own body and what you need it for, they can sort of guide you to the strains that are good for sedating. Or maybe you're using certain strains for the daytime because you want something uplifting, but relaxing at the same time, but you don't want to fall asleep. So it's really about choosing the right chemovars, the right strains for the time of day and for your needs.
And then I would also layer onto that the terpene profile, because you're going to have strains that have, essential oil like lavender, a citrus-based, pine, pepper, whatever it is, and those have different.
So define terpene.
Yeah. So the essential oils of the plant that make it sort of give it that smell, and there's also flavonoids for the taste, so you can talk about those as well. But I think that there's also that part of the profile that you need to be aware of so that you know what you're getting.
Yeah, right. Because certain strains will have a lavender profile. And if you think of lavender, that's what you could use to help you sleep. But certain terpene profiles will have citrus. And when you walk down the supermarket aisle and you smell citrus, your mood is uplifted. You actually feel a little more energized. So you would use the citrus terpene and the cannabis for the day, not for night.
My God.
It's a lot.
No, it really, I mean, if you're just walking into this, it feels overwhelming. And I mean, I know what works for me. Like I started, and I do tinctures and edibles at night, and that helps. That I can totally tell the difference. I sleep through the night, and it was a whole total.
But how long did it take you to get there? It took it took you some time. So you needed to take the time to find what worked for you. And I think that, good things come to those who work at it. You really need to make an effort to get to that point, but it is well worth it because you're doing something that is going to, benefit your health and wellness, but also is very personal for you. So you're getting what you need, how you need it, and someone else is not telling you, like, this is what you need.
And it teaches us to be more proactive for our health. I mean, we live in a culture where you go to the doctor and he's like, okay, he or she's like 2 pills. See you next week, right? But this is actually making you disciplined so you can keep track of just sleep, your attention, how is your mood, how is your sex life. I mean, it really incorporates a holistic way of living when you bring in plant medicine.
That's awesome. I think that what people also forget is that we are so conditioned now to be siloed in our health, right? So if we're taking CBD or THC for our sleep, it's actually benefiting our overall health and our overall systems, right? So it's not just putting us to sleep like a Xanax or whatever.
Right.
You're getting all these other benefits, which I think is amazing.
And everyone knows if you're sleep deprived, you wake up moodier. You can be very irrational, memory loss. I mean, it almost seems like you have early dementia if you're sleep deprived. So there's so much, high blood pressure, worsens diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome.
And you just make bad decisions. You just make bad decisions when you're tired. At the end of the day, like, you just don't tend to think at your best and be at your best.
Right.
So would you say that cannabis affects women differently than men?
100%.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Our hormones.
Yeah.
Our hormones make us more sensitive to cannabinoids.
Yeah. I think also too our level of tolerance, being able to build up to a certain amount.
Correct.
Also size matters, age matter, all of those things, but 100% different for men and women.
Yeah. Which is why we created our CBD and women's health course.
Right. So when we had talked about creating the course, you said specifically, I want to do this for women. You want to do it for women's health. And I think people don't make the distinction that all medications affect, men and women differently. Why did you want to do something specifically for women?
Because women are over-medicated. Women are over-prescribed.
Really?
And medication, natural or synthetic, affects us differently. We usually have to take much lower doses of antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, antibiotics, sleep aids. We might feel groggier with certain medications. Medications hit us a lot harder, and cannabis is no different. CBD is no different. So I wanted to create a course especially for women because of the different nuances that have to be discussed. I also found it really important to share women's stories so that we can all work together, relate to each other, and be more open, removing the stigma behind cannabis medicine.
I mean, you've been a big proponent for cannabis education.
I have for a very long time. I will also say too that most clinical trials on drugs are done on men. Not women. And so that is a problem for me because you're giving me a dosage where you haven't even tested on women yet. But anyway, yes, I have been a proponent of cannabis education for a long time because it is so new to this world. Cannabis as medicine. Not adult use recreational, but cannabis as medicine, and that phrase, and talking about patients and cannabis doctors and all of the things that we've been discussing over the years of, sleep disruption, sex, traumatic brain injury, pain, anxiety, all of those things coupled with cannabis, you need to educate yourself. You need to understand what is happening to your body, how to use the plant, why you want to use all of these things. And the better educated you are, the better decisions you're going to make for yourself, the happier you'll be.
So, takeaways, right? Someone has sleep disruption, they want to figure something out. So going low and slow, so they can take 10 to 15 milligrams of something, maybe a tincture or,
Yeah.
and then maybe stack it with a gummy or something.
And give yourself time. Give yourself a few weeks. I mean, I get calls all the time. I tried the gummy last night, it didn't work. Like, you have to play with it. Give yourself 30 days, be forgiving.
Yeah.
Give yourself a window to experiment and journal it. And say, oh, I actually slept these 3 days better. What happened? What did I do during the day? What did I do for my night routine? How much tincture did I take? How much gummy? How much did I inhale?
I also think that CBD builds up in the system over time. It's not just take it once and all of a sudden it's a miracle. It's really important to understand that time is your friend in this situation. And the more you do, the more benefits you'll see.
Yeah.